أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله تعالى على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Speaking of the legendary military ideology of the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salawatullahi ta'ala alayhi, the era of Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu anhu. Picking up from page number 242, this is in volume number 2, your humble orator Muhammad Israel. And we are discussing the various publications that undermine reality in terms of the Shia doctrine. When mentioned the Umayyad Khalif, that author described, meaning the one before, he described them, meaning the Umayyads, as kings, but when he mentioned the Abbasid Caliphs, he called them Caliphs. In his book Al-Buldan, he also calls their state the Blessed State, which is a reflection of his hypocrisy and practice of taqiyya, dissimulation. This book is an example of the devastating and distorted or deviating and distortion to be found in the writing of Islamic history, but it was used as a reference by many Orientalists and westernized Muslims who undermined Islamic history and the image of its figures. In fact, this book is worthless from an academic point of view. The first part is mostly filled with stories, myths, and legends, and the second part is written from a partisan point of view. It is also lacking the simplest principles of academic authentication. And I do believe we were discussing Nahjul Balagha. The book Muruj al-Dahab wa Ma'adin al-Jawhar was written by al-Mas'udi, whose full name is Abu al-Hasan Ali ibn al-Husayn ibn al-Mas'udi. He was one of the descendants of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. It was said that he was a man from the Maghrib, but al-Mas'udi himself stated that he was from Iraq and that he moved to Egypt. If what was meant by the Maghrib was the western part of the Arab world as opposed to the eastern part, then Egypt is part of the western part of the Muslim world, so there is no contradiction. Al-Mas'udi was a Shia of whom Ibn Hajar said his books are filled with proof that he was a Shia in Mu'tazilat. Al-Mas'udi argued that the concept of the rightful appointed heir for the eminent or the imamat was known and established by the time of Adam, and that it was transmitted from generation to generation until the time of the Messenger of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ibn Hajar mentioned the differences among the people after that with regard to whether there is a divine text or it is to be left for people to choose. In the Imami Shia belief that there is a text in his book Masruj al-Dahabi. Al-Mas'udi paid a great deal of attention to the events surrounding Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu. He paid more attention to him than he did to the life of Muhammad salawatullahi ta'ala alayhi in the same book. He focused his attention on the household of Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu and followed reports on them very clearly in his book Muruj al-Dahabi. He tried shamelessly to distort the history of the first generation of the Islamic history. These are some of the classical books that we warn against and which had a great impact on the writing of some contemporary authors such as Taha Hussein al-Fitna al-Kubra Ali wa Banuhu and Aqad al-Abqariyat series. They quoted numerous fabricated and weak reports and based their analysis on them. Hence, they were mistaken in their conclusions and made serious errors concerning the companions of the Prophet salawatullahi ta'ala alayhi. The same is true of Abdul Wahhab al-Najjar in his book Al-Khulafa al-Rashidin, where he quotes texts of the Rafidi reports from Al-Imama was Siyasa and Hassan Ibrahim in his book Amr ibn al-As, in which he concludes on the basis of fabricated Rafidi reports that Amr ibn al-As was a man in pursuit of his own interests and ambitions, who would not get involved in any matter unless he could see some worldly interest or benefit for himself. There are also other researchers who followed the same methodology and thus entered dark tunnels because of their being far removed from the methodology of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah when dealing with the huge accumulation of historical reports. 3.8. The Orientalists in Islamic history. One of the worst groups when it comes to distorting Islamic history is the Rafidi Shias. Of all groups and types, they were among the earliest groups to emerge, and they have a heretical political system and their own set of deviant beliefs and ideology. This is the group that tells the most lies against its opponents, and they are among the most vehemently opposed of people towards the companions, as we will see. Among the basic foundations of their beliefs are purging the companions and denouncing them as disbelievers, especially the two Sheikh Abu Bakr as-Siddiq and Sayyidina Umar bin Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, whom they refer to as sorcery and evil. The Shia have the greatest number of narrators and storytellers who took on mission of spreading their lies and fabrications and compiling them in books and essays about the events of Islamic history, especially internal events. Shu'ubiyah and tribalism also had an effect on the fabrication of historical reports and stories aimed at distorting Islamic history and proving the superiority of one sect or people or race over another, ignoring the Sharia criterion of superiority, namely taqwa. When Allah Jalla Jalaluhu says, verily the most honorable of you with Allah Jalla Jalaluhu is that believer who has taqwa. This is Surah number 49, Ayah number 13. The deviant sects took advantage of the prevalence of storytellers, the ignorance and lack of knowledge of the Sunnah and the part of most of the people, and the fact that some of them had drifted away from the truth while seeking to earn a living. They spread their lies and fabricated stories which these storytellers welcomed and spread among the common folk without realizing the situation. Hundreds of fabricated reports about the companions and the Tabi'un and Muslim scholars which undermined them and distorted their history were disseminated through them. But by His grace and blessing, Allah Jalla Jalaluhu guided a number of scholarly critics who strove hard to examine the narrators and narration, distinguishing between true and false and defending the beliefs and history of this ummah. The Sunni scholars put a great deal of effort into pointing out the fabricated reports by quoting them and highlighting those narrators who were weak, suspicious, or followers of whims and desires. They drew up a methodology for examining the reports and determining which to accept, and they were successful in these efforts. Among the most prominent of those who took on the mission of explaining historical errors and pointing out flaws in the false reports were Al-Qadi ibn al-Arabi in Al-Awasim min Al-Qawasim. Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, in many of his books and essays, especially his valuable book Minhaj as-Sunnah an-Nabawiyya في نقد كلام الشيعة والقدرية, the critic al-Dahabi in many of his historical writings such as Siyar al-Allam al-Nubula, Tarikh al-Islam in Mizan الدال في نقد الرجال Al-Hafid Ibn Kathir, the interpreter of the Quran and historian, in his book Al-Bidaya wa Nihaya. Al-Hafid Ibn Hajar Al-Asqilani in his book Fath al-Bari fi Sharh Sahih al-Bukhari. لسان الميزان التحديب and الإصابة في معارف الصحابة. With regard to the methods used by the Shia to distort the historical events and images of the early generation of companions and tabi'un, there were many ways, including outright fabrication and lies, mentioning a true story or incident but adding or omitting details so as to distort it and give the opposite idea, quoting reports out of context so that the meaning is distorted and false interpretation of events is given, highlighting shortcomings and mistakes while concealing well-established facts, fabricating poetry and attributing it to some poet in order to support some so-called historical event, because moving along now, Arab poetry is regarded as a historical document and proof that helps to authenticate reports. Fabricating books and essays and falsely attributing them to scholars and well-known characters, as the Rafidi fabricated the book Al-Imama wa Siyasa, which they attributed to Abu Muhammad, Abdullah ibn Muslim ibn Qutayba ad-Daynuri, because he was famous among the trusted by the Sunnis, as we have seen above. In the last century, these lies and distortions were welcomed by Western scholars and writers such as Orientalists and missionaries during the period in which they invaded and colonized Muslim countries. They found in this material what they were looking for, and they started to highlight it and focus on it. Motivated by their fanaticism and hatred of the Muslimin, they added lies by inventing events that never took place or misinterpreting historical events, purposefully distorting and misinterpreting the facts to support their beliefs. This group was then supported by a large number of the students of the Orientalists from Arab and Muslim countries who adopted their research methodology and their ideas and concepts for analyzing and interpreting history. They took up the banner after the Europeans departed from the Muslim lands. Thus the harm that they did was worse and greater than that of their Orientalist teachers and their predecessors among the misguided and innovating groups. That is because they, like their teachers, claim to be following a pure academic spirit and scientific method in research by giving up any and all preconceptions, but in fact most of them gave up nothing but their faith. They had no sincerity towards the truth and no knowledge of following a sound academic methodology in proving historical events, such as comparing reports, knowing the value of the sources to which they were referring and the extent to which the narrators were authentic and accurate, and studying the context of those narrators in terms of human nature and development. They did not learn anything of scientific or academic methodology except for superficial matters such as how to write footnotes and put together bibliographies and so on. This is probably what scientific methodology meant to them. Muhibbuddin al-Khatib said, those who receive a foreign education are controlled by the illusion that they are disconnected from the past, and their attitude towards its figure is like that of a public attorney towards the accused. Indeed, some of them even went to the extremes to appear in the footnotes of others as if they had no connection with any part of Arab and Muslim history. They had no connection with any part of Arab and Muslim history, following in the footsteps of the Orientalists with their suspicious views of the past. They had a sense of contentment and followed their whims, and they followed their whims and desires at the time when fairness dictates that they should verify the matter in order to reach a conclusion and feel at ease with it before they have enough evidence to prove it. Inshallah, we will stop this one here on page number 247. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك وتبارك اسم ربك وتعالى جدك ولا إله غيرك ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.